Hey everybody, this is Cal.
And I'm Kim.
And you're listening to Shiny Things.
And today we're going to be talking about a school that was actually loosely based on season 2 of American Horror Story, the Briarcliff Manor. And I know Kelly is an American Horror Story fan. I am not. It's too scary.
I didn't care for the 1984 season, but...
No?
But I digress.
So, the school that I'm referring to is called Willowbrook State School. It was thought up and it was put into motion to have it start being built in 1938 for teaching developmentally disabled children and adults in a section of Staten Island. So while construction wasn't completed until 1942, it took quite a while to complete it, but when it opened, it didn't open for that original purpose. It was converted into a United States Army hospital during World War II.
Oh, so they had a lot of TB and stuff like that.
So it wasn't until after the war when it opened for its original purpose in October of 1947. A few years after opening, there were several outbreaks of hepatitis which continued for decades, which you'd think this would have led to an increase of medical care, but you'd be wrong.
These hepatitis cases were actually patients who were being infected to see how the disease spread. While it did bring along the hepatitis B and the hepatitis A vaccine, numerous people in this hospital or home were infected with hepatitis by way of, I think you have the exact ways.
Yeah, but they were injected with the virus.
So that's how they figured out that
and
one was bloodborne and one wasn't.
And they also forced fed them feces. Ugh. So basically 100% of the people in the hospital, or the school that they want to call it, was infected with the hepatitis. And all this was being done by medical researchers.
Mm-hmm. And it pisses me off. It really grinds my gears because we had the Tuskegee where they infected black men with, or they didn't infect them. Well, they did. They gave medicine and some didn't get medicine. So then there was this big fund set up for the Tuskegee Experiment Fund. So these people fortunately received funds from that program to be able to take care of their hepatitis after they left the school.
What I thought was so bizarre was that all of these studies were being taken place in the 50s through the 70s. Now, the 50s, it's bad enough, but the 70s? You know...
Just the ethical... Because I've read a ton of different things, and some people are like, oh, they did great work. No, they did not!
No, they did not. This was barbaric and inhumane. So, after the public found out about all this, the public's concern forced the research project and medical studies to be discontinued. Thank God.
Good.
Maurice Hillman, the studies that were performed at Willowbrook were the most unethical medical experience that were ever performed on children in the United States. So by the year 1965, Willowbrook housed over 6,000 intellectually disabled people, despite having the maximum capacity of 4,000. That's crazy.
That's not awesome sauce.
Residents of Willowbrook outnumbered staff 50-1.
And we think people have it bad nowadays.
Exactly. And were left wandering the building and school grounds unsupervised with nothing to do for hours at a time. A former staff member by the name of Diane, I want to say Bugnelli or something like that. I can't pronounce
Bugnelli
that.
Sounds right.
Okay. The former staff member is stated as saying individuals were denied their basic right to humanity. She went on to say prisons allot for 80 square feet per inmate, while Willowbrook provided only 35 square feet per resident. Unlike today's standards and requirements, staff weren't required to submit background checks for employment. And it was later revealed that many staff members physically, sexually, and emotionally abused residents. What the hell kind of person are you?
Right?
That you are going to not only take advantage of another human being, but you're going to take advantage of somebody that do not have all their facilities.
And it's just remarkable that there wasn't like a hepatitis outbreak outside of the facility, because they weren't using condoms.
Right. So there's a former resident, his name was Bernard Carabello, described getting beaten with sticks and belts and being kicked into walls by staff members. He also said sexual abuse was rampant at the hands of staff and other residents. Now, what you have to remember is, this is a school for developmentally disabled children and adults, but what they considered disabled, to some standards today, it's not considered a disability.
Right.
To be autistic or something else. I mean, autistic people are brilliant.
We would probably be deemed disabled.
They considered somebody
like with ADD,
or even a diabetic. Yep. So they're treating everybody the same and beating them and misusing them.
It's horrible. Hopefully they're all shoveling shit in hell right now.
Well, one can only hope. So there was I'm just going to use her first name. Her name was Diane. She actually worked at Willowbrook and started in 1969. And she recalled on her first day of work, she was given a big heavy key that used to unlock all the steel doors that lined the hallway. So my first thing when I read that was, why do you need to lock the doors?
Right.
I mean, I've
Not
never heard
with
of that
serial
before.
Killers.
Right. And she recalls opening a door and finding 40 toddlers in it. Some were smiling. Most were drooling or crying. Asked her name. Some walked towards her while others just sat in silence. Some were lying in wooden carts. They actually looked like they were the boxes that you pack fruit or something in to ship.
Oh, like those like with the bananas coming with those huge spiders. Ugh.
Yeah. So they were laying in wooden carts, and others sat on the floor, and she stated they were denied their basic right to humanity while living at the school. Residents were rarely taught much of anything, despite Willowbrook's claim of being a school. There were no behavioral modification exercises, no social skills, no hygiene, no grooming skills of any kind were taught to anyone. She also said on the rare occasion, you're gonna freak out. On the rare occasion showers were given, they were given in groups and given 5 minutes to clean themselves with no soap, no toothpaste, and no individual towels. Many residents needed help eating, but the lack of staff led to a cut in meal times. And they couldn't even have their basic squares. Which to me, sitting down to a meal, it's enjoyable. I love to eat.
Right.
Right?
Not if you're sitting across from somebody like showered a month ago and just...
Which, that was the lot there. Everybody was dirty and filthy and stinking, and it wasn't their fault.
I know, that's what sucks.
So instead of it being an enjoyable mealtime, they were actually given 3 minutes to digest whatever was offered to them. Which she said was gruel.
Ugh.
You know what that is?
Yeah.
That's terrible. I think that's equivalent to the slop that they get on...
In prison, yep.
I was going to say Big Brother. When they were the have-nots. I don't know if you watched that. But
no.
If you were a have-not, you slept in the crummy room with uncomfortable beds, and you got slop.
Ugh.
Which I'm sure they lost some weight, but still, I digress. She went on to say she was employed for Willowbrook for 11 years. So here was my question. First day out, she's given this big key to unlock doors that patients are locked behind. But she continues to work there for another 11 years. Now, she doesn't deny that it was deplorable and they were denied their basic right to humanity. Yet she's continued working there.
Right.
What's the matter with that?
Is it almost like... It's almost like Stockholm syndrome.
It's disgusting.
But I would have turned those motherfuckers in, like,
exactly.
right away.
And that's what I said. You know, I get people need their jobs, but no amount of money should deter you from doing what you know is right.
Right.
You know, they can't stick up for themselves. Anybody that worked there should have been human enough to stand up for these people.
Did anybody ever go in and investigate?
Yes. So, Senator Robert Kennedy toured the institution that same year and was quoted by saying individuals in the overcrowded facility are living in filth and dirt and their clothes are rags. They're in rooms less comfortable and cheerful than animal cages in the zoo. Senator Kennedy, now you would think that the senator is there and he's saying all this stuff. Shit's gonna get taken care of. It's gonna get taken care of. You'd be wrong. So Senator Kennedy offered a series of recommendations for improving conditions and called for a 5-year action plan for improvements.
That's an IJ. Like, if somebody walked in there today, that would be immediate jeopardy. Doors closed, people moved.
Things were a lot different back then. They weren't held to the standards they are now. It's very sad. But yes, the school stayed open. That's deplorable. So, although the hepatitis study had been discontinued in the school, the school's reputation of being a warehouse for New York City's mentally disabled continued. Many residents of Willowbrook were abandoned by their families, foster care agencies, or other systems designed to care for them. Donna Stone was an advocate for the mentally disabled children and victims of child abuse during this time and was able to gain access to the school by posing as a social worker. A social work grad. So she's badass.
Yeah, so she's going in to do
some
undercover.
She was doing the right thing. So after her observation of Willowbrook, she shared her information with the press, and shortly after, a series of articles appeared in local newspapers describing crowded, filthy living conditions at Willowbrook, as well as the neglect and poor treatment of residents. Jane Curtin was the first reporter to write about Willowbrook after visiting the facility in the mid-60s. But the story didn't gain the attention she had hoped for. It wasn't until ABC's news Geraldo Rivera exposed Willowbrook, the last disgrace.
Okay, so he's the one that went in.
Yes.
Okay, that's the place. I remember a big story about that, but, well, I wasn't alive, but.
Well, I was, and I remember that on TV.
Because they took cameras in and everything.
He went balls out. They took cameras in there. They actually were showing these poor people. I mean, and me being a little kid, I was like dumbstruck. Like, what in the heck, you know?
Right. And that's like when kids, when kids say they have it bad, it's like, no.
Yeah, you don't know what having it bad is. So the national spotlight was turned on to Staten Island and the school's treatment of its residents. Before the expose aired, the network warned, "Tonight is a public service. We're going to make you sick." This is what it looked like. This is what it sounded like. But how can I tell you about the way it smelled? Geraldo was saying. Oof. It smelled of filth. It smelled of disease. It smelled of death.